This hospital has a disturbing secret. Have you guys seen this video? Because we haven't.
All right, let's jump into it.
In 2015, a startling discovery was made inside of this off-limits area inside of a prominent South African hospital. Now, at the time, no one really understood what this discovery meant, and so eventually people just kind of forgot about it and moved on. Until 2 years later, when another eerily similar discovery was made inside of another prominent South African hospital in one of their off-limits areas. I can't believe this story has not gotten more press because one,
Why do these
it's
hospitals
recent,
have off-limit
and
areas?
two, the implications of these discoveries are mind-boggling. But before we get into that story, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place because that's all we do, and we upload once a week. So, if that's of interest to you, please put coyote urine in the like button's apple juice. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn
Okay.
on notifications so you don't miss
So
any of our
interesting.
weekly uploads. Okay, let's get into today's story.
MrBallen.
Missing patience.
I don't know why there's so many
On
off-limits
October
rooms
4th,
in hospitals.
2017, a 61-year-old father of 6 named Tatike Katsai arrived at a hospital in Stellenbosch, which is one of the richest towns in South Africa. Tatike, who lived in the area with his family, had been dealing with some stomach issues over the last several months, and so this day he was finally going in to have abdominal surgery to hopefully alleviate those issues. So, after entering the building, Tatike was checked in, and then before long he was transferred to the operating room where surgeons got to work on him. After the surgery was over, Tatike was transferred to a recovery room in the hospital where he was scheduled to stay for at least a couple of days so the doctors and nurses could watch over him while he recovered and make sure there was no complications from the procedure. And
Sounds
so,
pretty
on the
normal.
afternoon of October 4th, Tatike just kind of lounged around inside of his recovery room. He couldn't really do anything because of the incisions on his stomach, and so he mostly just laid in his bed, he watched TV, he relaxed, he ate, and then at some point, some of his family members came into the hospital and they visited with him as well. By the end of that day, the day of his surgery, Tatike was definitely sore from the incisions, but overall, he was in good spirits, and to the medical staff, it seemed very likely that his surgery was a success. Early the next morning, at around 5:15 a.m., one of the nurses in the hospital went to Tatike's room to check on him. And when she went inside, Tatike was awake, he was alert, he seemed totally normal. And so after a brief conversation, the nurse told Tatike that she was just going to get him some fresh linens to make up his bed. And so Tatike nodded a thank you to her, and then the nurse, she turned away from Tatike, who's in his bed.
Okay.
She stepped out of the one door in the room into the hallway. She grabbed fresh linens off of a cart, and then she turned back around and went back into Tatike's room,
gone.
except now Tatike was not in his bed.
What?
The nurse
Okay.
immediately thought, okay, well then Tatike must have gone into his bathroom because the
Sure.
door was shut.
But I thought he
went to the
couldn't move.
bathroom. And so, just kind of reflexively, the nurse walked over to Tatike's now empty bed and replaced the linens. And then when she was done, she just looked at the bathroom door inside of his room, expecting Tatike to come outside any minute. But after a couple of minutes passed and Tatike had still not come out of the bathroom, the nurse decided to go over and just knock. And so she walked over, she knocked on the bathroom door and just kind of called out, hey, is everything okay in there? But there was no answer. And so the nurse eventually just tried the handle, and when she saw it was open, she called out that she was coming inside. She opened up the bathroom door, and it was empty. And so the nurse, she whipped her head around and looked back out
Where'd
at
he
the
go?
room where Tatike should have been, and she saw, he's not on the bed, he's not under the bed, he's not anywhere in this room. Where could he have possibly gone? And she's thinking to herself, the only door out of this room is into the hallway, the same door that she had used to go
Right.
out and get the linens. And if somehow Tatike had ran out of that door in the few seconds that her back was turned from Tatike,
That'd have been
she
impressive.
certainly would have heard him or seen him. Because again, she was right outside the door and only outside of his room for a couple of seconds.
Or even, like,
Not
sensed
to mention
him, right?
the fact, Tatike has
Yes,
major
because nurses have
incisions on
spider
his
sense.
stomach.
You can sense
and
when
could
someone's
barely
behind you. Shut
stand,
up.
let alone walk or run. And so, totally baffled, this nurse ultimately left the room and went and told her superiors. This hospital would immediately begin looking for Tatike on the grounds of the hospital, but they would do it kind of quietly. They wouldn't call TK's family to tell them that, hey, we can't find him, nor would they call police. And some have speculated that either one, the hospital did not think this was an emergency and they would quickly
Is this like
find
far enough
TK
back where they didn't have
and that
cameras of the
everything would be
hallways?
fine, or two, the hospital was just so embarrassed at the idea that they lost a patient, they didn't want anyone to know, and so that's why they didn't tell anyone. Regardless, the hospital would search for TK all day on the 5th, the day he went missing, and they wouldn't find him. And then the next day, the 6th, the hospital again would spend the entire day quietly searching everywhere in the hospital, but they wouldn't find him again. And so finally on the next day, the 7th, so 48 hours after TK had just kind of vanished inside of his room, the hospital would reach out to TK's family and they would say to them, hey, is TK home with you guys?
Not a good look.
No, he's supposed to be with you. And so the hospital was
Can you
like,
imagine getting that phone call?
2 days ago, so we don't know where he is. And so TK's family
Bro.
is horrified.
Yeah, they
not
left
only
2
that
days
they were
ago.
totally
Just
left
thought
in the
we'd tell you
dark,
later.
But they would find out over the course of this conversation that the hospital had not even contacted the police yet. And so the family, they reached out to the police, and then
Never
later
watched the
that
first
day,
48?
the family would
Hello?
meet the police at the Stellenbosch Hospital, and then a very public search of the property would ensue to look for TK. However, again, no one could find him. Authorities would continue to search both the hospital and also the neighboring area outside of the hospital over the next couple of days, but after they continued to find absolutely nothing, the search began to wind down. And so TK's devastated family was left with absolutely no idea what to think or what to do. Fast forward to October 20th, so 15 days after TK had gone missing. And on this day, the 20th, there was a construction crew at this hospital in Stellenbosch doing some renovations. And at some point on this day, one of the workers had to climb into the ceiling of one of the floors of this hospital. Now, the space above the ceiling is this tight, cramped space, almost like an attic. It's very big and wide. It's like the whole length of that floor. And really the only people that would ever go into the ceiling are construction workers or other authorized personnel that needed to do work. It's not a place that the public would ever go into.
You're gonna go up there to TK.
Went up into the
Hey,
ceiling.
what's up?
He had a headlamp on, and he's kind of looking
Ain't
around.
no
He's
way.
looking for what he needs to do up there. And at some point, he turns his head.
Ain't no
and his
way.
light illuminates a person
No
sitting in the
way.
corner, far away from him, way up against the side in this tiny little attic space. And it would turn out it was TK.
What?
And he was deceased. The hospital
What?
had
He was
absolutely
dead.
no clue how TK could have gotten up there. Not only is it obviously not a publicly accessible area, but the actual way to get up into the ceiling, the door that leads up into the ceiling, is very difficult to
He
find.
just had a
And
surgery,
if
too.
TK
Yeah.
found this entrance into the ceiling, it would have been nearly impossible for him to actually get into the ceiling. Because again, this guy has serious incisions on
Right.
his stomach from the surgery he got. He could barely sit up. He couldn't really walk. So the idea of him climbing and pulling himself up into the ceiling just seems impossible. Then there was the very strange autopsy results. Now, the full report has not been made public, but TK's family had a consultation with the hospital after the autopsy was complete, and they
gonna have a
would go to
consultation with the
reporters
same
and
hospital.
talk about what the hospital told them. And apparently, the hospital told the family that TK did not die from complications from his surgery, and they heavily insinuated that TK did not die from natural causes. Something happened to him, and the hospital had no idea what this something was, and that's what killed him. And the hospital also told the family that TK likely was dead before he went up into the
Someone
ceiling.
pulled him
Meaning
up there?
Someone or something killed TK, and then someone or something placed him in the ceiling.
What?
Again, this is just from the family going to reporters and talking about their discussion with the hospital. The hospital's only official statement has basically been that they have cooperated with the family and they don't really know what happened to TK.
Oh
Now,
my
of course,
God.
this is a very strange story. But it gets even weirder.
It
On May
can't
10th,
possibly.
2019, so about a year and a half after TK was found deceased in the Stellenbosch hospital ceiling, a 53-year-old father of 4 named Sandile Sabia arrived at another hospital in South Africa. It was in a city called Durban, which is considered to be one of the nicest and
A totally
wealthiest
different
places in South
hospital,
Africa,
okay.
Different.
similar to Stellenbosch. Sandile was a builder, and he had been working on a house when he had fallen and broken his leg. Specifically,
I was gonna gonna say if it was stomach problems, then like.
The bone that runs from your hip down to your knee.
Ooh, that's a
It's
bad
the bone
place.
in your thigh.
Oh.
So just for reference, if you break your femur, you can't walk.
Yeah.
So, with some assistance from friends and family, Sandil hobbled his way into this hospital in Durban, and he began to receive care. 2 days later, on May 17th, Sandil was still in the hospital, still recovering from this broken femur, when his cousin came to visit him. The cousin said Sandil seemed totally normal, and that during this visit, Sandil told the cousin that after the cousin left, Sandil was going to be transported from this hospital to another hospital nearby, where he was going to get an x-ray of his leg, as well as talk to another orthopedic surgeon. But apparently, after this cousin left from this visit, the doctors at the Durban hospital walked into Sandil's room to take him and transport him to this other hospital, and Sandil was not in his room. Now, this hospital in Durban was known for their very tight security, and so right away, their reaction was very different than the Stellenbosch hospital's reaction. This hospital immediately contacted authorities and said, "We are missing a patient," and they began a very public search of their hospital for Sandil. But they couldn't find him. On May 18th, so 6 days after Sandil disappeared,
Was there something else
hospital
going
in
with the
Durban
ceiling?
began to smell this horrible stench coming from one wing of their hospital. And so hospital workers would track the stench to a janitor's closet, and when they opened it up, they saw this black liquid dripping out of the ceiling, and the liquid was coming from Sandil's decomposing body that was located in the ceiling. Sandil's autopsy would be carried out very quickly. However, the results of that autopsy have never been made public, and Sandil's family has not commented on the results of this autopsy. As of today, all we know is that within a 2-year period, 2 seemingly ordinary South African men, who both could either not walk at all or who could barely walk because of their physical injuries, somehow snuck out of their hospital rooms totally undetected by staff and then wound up dead in the hospital ceiling. Some say the men really did somehow sneak out of their own accord and decided to go into the ceiling, and that's what happened. Others say both men were murdered and then placed into the ceiling, and still others think these 2 cases are the best examples of something called spontaneous teleportation, which is the hypothetical phenomenon where a human suddenly disappears and then almost instantaneously reappears in another location. But for now, there is no official explanation.
Spontaneous teleportation, bro?
I've never even heard of that.
What are people just Nightcrawler?
I've never even heard of that.
So that's going to do it. If you got something out of today's story and you haven't done this already, please put coyote urine in the like button's apple juice. Also, please subscribe to our channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of our weekly uploads. We have a podcast called the MrBallen Podcast.
I'm going to end it there.
Yeah.
What the heck?
I mean, I've heard of like spontaneous combustion where people say they're just like, I'm on fire! But you dead, but like that spontaneous teleportation, like
that's insane.
I mean, I've seen that in like videos. People are like, and then they edit and they're gone. You know? But it's next level.
That's crazy. 2 different hospitals, 2 different types of injuries, but they both found dead in a ceiling.
Well, just don't go to the hospital. That's all I can say.
No, that's not official advice. Don't say that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you saw, please subscribe. If you have any suggestions, leave them in the comments. And we'll see you in the next one.
Yeah, see ya.
Bye.